He crashed alone until he heard a whisper in the darkness. The sky was full of fire, smoke, sparks, silence. Then a loud crash shook the ground. The human man lay still inside his wrecked escape pod. Blood trickled down his forehead. He opened, his eyes slowly coughing through the smoke. The air smelled like metal and burning wires. His name was Ethan. He was the only survivor of a deep space transport ship. An explosion had torn the ship apart, and he had fallen onto this strange planet, alone. Outside, the ground was dry, cracked, and full of red dust. Huge black mountains surrounded the crash site. The sky was orange with thick clouds that never moved. No wind, no sound, no sign of life. Ethan pulled himself out of the pod and looked around. Everything was dead. Even the sun looked weak. He checked the supplies. Half a water canister, a broken scanner, and one emergency heat pack. "This place is a grave," he whispered. He built a small shelter using metal pieces from the escape pod. By evening, he had a tiny fire burning, but the silence around him felt wrong. Not peaceful. Empty. As darkness covered the land, the cold crept in. Ethan wrapped his coat tighter and sat by the fire, staring into it. Then, he heard something. A sound. Soft. Almost like a whisper. He sat up quickly, looking around. Nothing. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. Just the wind, or was it? He waited. Minutes passed. Then again, a whisper. This time, closer. He grabbed the emergency light and stepped outside. The light cut through the darkness, but the beam only showed dust and stone. Then, he saw them. 2 small footprints in the sand. Fresh ones. They weren't his. His heart pounded. He followed the prints, slowly. The light flickered. His boots crunched against the dirt. The footprints led behind a fallen wall of an old alien structure, half buried in the ground. It looked like a ruin. Twisted metal and glass vines crawling over strange shapes. He stepped inside, careful. "Hello? Is someone there?" Silence. Then, a whisper. Soft. Frightened. In a language he didn't understand. He turned quickly. Nothing. But the air was colder now, heavy. A soft click echoed behind him. He spun around. A figure moved in the shadows. He held up his light, breathing fast. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at him from the corner of the broken structure. Not human. Not machine either. It was someone. Or something. Alive. Ethan took a step back, unsure if he should run or speak. The figure stepped forward, slowly, cautiously. It was a woman, or at least, she looked like one. Her skin was pale blue, glowing softly. Her eyes were silver, big and filled with fear. Her clothes were torn and covered in dust. She looked weak, hungry, alone. She raised a hand, not to attack, but to ask him to stop. Then, in a voice so soft it almost faded in the wind, she said, "Please, don't hurt me." Ethan lowered his light. He wasn't expecting this, not a monster, not a threat, just a scared alien woman whispering in the darkness. The hidden survivor wasn't human, but she was afraid of him. Ethan didn't move. The alien woman stood just a few steps away from him. Her body was thin, too thin, like she hadn't eaten in days, maybe longer. Her pale blue skin had small cuts, and her silver eyes stayed locked on his face, full of fear. She shook as she tried to stand tall, but her knees gave way. She dropped to the ground, breathing hard. Ethan slowly stepped forward. "It's okay," he said in a calm voice, raising both hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't understand the words, but maybe she felt the kindness in his tone. Still, she crawled back, hiding behind a cracked metal beam. Ethan looked around. The place was a mess, an old alien shelter half destroyed by time. Dust covered everything. Strange lights blinked on the walls, but none of them worked. He carefully placed his heat pack on the ground and opened it. Warm steam rose from it. Then he unwrapped a piece of emergency food and laid it nearby. The alien girl didn't speak, but her eyes stared at the food like it was magic. Ethan stepped back. She waited. Then, after a long moment, she crawled forward. Her fingers shook as she picked up the food and sniffed it. She didn't trust it at first, but hunger was stronger than fear. She took a bite, and then another, and then she cried. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she ate. She made soft sounds, painful, broken words in a language Ethan couldn't understand. But he knew the feeling. She had been alone, maybe for a very long time. Ethan sat on the other side of the shelter and didn't speak. He just watched, letting her finish. After she ate, she looked at him again. This time her eyes were softer, less afraid. She placed a hand on her chest and spoke one word. Sira. Ethan nodded slowly. Sira, he repeated. She pointed at him. He smiled faintly. Ethan. She tilted her head and tried the word. Ethan, close enough. A name, a connection, a beginning. That night, Ethan returned to his tiny shelter and couldn't sleep. The planet was still cold and silent, but now he knew he wasn't alone. There was another heartbeat out there, another soul, but something still didn't feel right. How had she survived all this time? Who left her here? And more important, was something else still out there with them? The next day, he returned with a new heat pack and more food. Sira was still in the same place, but now she stood to greet him. Barely. Her legs trembled, but she didn't hide. She had drawn strange symbols in the dirt, circular marks, lines, crossing like stars. She pointed at them, then at the ceiling, then at herself. She was trying to explain something. Ethan didn't understand, but he knew she wasn't just a survivor. There was more to her. She guided him deeper into the ruin. The hallways were dark, but Sira walked them like she knew the path. She reached a locked metal door, old and broken. She placed her hand on it. The door opened. Ethan's heart raced. Inside was a small room full of glowing panels and broken machines. It looked like a command center, but not for a home, for a prison. Sira stared at the walls. Her fingers trembled as she touched a screen. It blinked to life. A message appeared in strange alien writing. Sira read it. Her face went pale. She turned, to Ethan whispering something in her language. She looked afraid again, deeply afraid. And then, from the far end of the ruin, a sound. Not a whisper, not a voice, a growl. Low, hungry, and getting closer. Ethan grabbed Sira's hand. They ran, storms above, secrets below the planet's surface. The wind howled like a warning. Ethan and Sira ran through the narrow metal halls, their footsteps echoing under the ground. The growl they heard wasn't just sound, it was alive. It followed them, slow, heavy, breathing. They didn't stop until the passage opened into a large underground chamber. Ethan gasped. The room was massive, bigger than any ruin he had seen so far. Blue lights glowed from the walls. Strange machines sat in, the corners covered in dust but still humming quietly. In the center stood a tall pillar, cracked but pulsing with a soft green light. Sira stepped toward it. The moment she touched the pillar, a sharp vibration ran through the floor. Ethan flinched. Sira, don't... But it was too late. The machines came alive. Holograms floated in the air. Alien symbols and shifting images. A galaxy map. Battle reports. Faces. Ships. Screams. Ethan couldn't understand it, but Sira could. She stared at the images with wide, frightened eyes. Her lips moved as she whispered in her native tongue. Her hands shook. Then, the pillar spoke, not in her voice, but in hers. Identity recognized. Sira, Royal Designate of Alari System. Status, missing. Security, deactivated. Ethan's mouth fell open. Royal? Sierra? She didn't move. She looked like she had just remembered a nightmare she thought was gone forever. The floor shifted slightly, metal plates moving, opening a path downward. The machines guided them toward another chamber. Sierra didn't speak, but she stepped forward. Ethan followed her. They moved into a dark hallway lit by dim blue lights that turned on one by one. At the end, a heavy door blocked their way. Sierra placed her hand on the panel. The door hissed and opened. What they found was not what they expected. The room was cold, very cold. The walls were made of black glass. Inside were clear pods, maybe 10 of them. Each pod had a creature inside, floating in green liquid. Some looked like her. Others looked worse, mutated, dead, half machine. Ethan took a step back. Sierra fell to her knees. A panel near the wall began to blink. Ethan stepped closer and wiped off the dust. A new message appeared, this time in rough translated English. Project, Echo Queen, genetic restoration of royal line. Outcome, failed. Reason, subject Sierra escaped. Order, terminate if found. Ethan turned to her, shocked. They were trying to remake her, he whispered. But she ran. Sierra stared at the pods, frozen. She touched the glass of one, and then looked at her reflection. She whispered, "Not real, not whole." Ethan crouched beside her. "You're alive. That's all that matters." But deep inside, he knew something had changed. Sierra wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was part of something bigger. Suddenly, alarms lit up the room. A voice spoke in a sharp tone, Sierra's language again. Sierra stood up fast. "Watcher wakes," she said in broken English. "No escape now." The door behind them slammed shut. Heavy, metal footsteps echoed in the hallway beyond. Ethan turned. "What's coming?" Sierra looked at him, fear in her silver eyes. The Guardian, made to keep secrets, made to kill. And then, the hallway lights went red. Her past was a lie, and now the planet wants her back. The red lights blinked like warning hearts. Loud thuds echoed down the corridor, slow, heavy steps growing closer. Ethan pulled Sierra behind a broken pod. His breath was shallow. "What is it? A machine?" Sierra nodded. "Half machine, half monster." The ground vibrated with each step. Then they saw it, the Guardian. It was over 7 feet tall, metal arms, long claws, and glowing eyes. Its head turned side to side, scanning. Its chest opened and closed like it was breathing. But it didn't breathe air. It breathed data. It stopped near the pods. It spoke in a cold, strange voice. "Royal subject located. Directive active. Reclaim or eliminate." Sierra gasped. Her body began to shake. Ethan held her wrist. "We have to move. Now." He spotted a half-open vent near the back wall. "Can you fit in there?" She nodded, barely. They crawled in. Just as the Guardian's head snapped toward the sound, it fired a blue beam into the corner they had just left. The metal exploded in sparks. The floor cracked. If they had stayed a second longer, the vent was tight, dark, and full of dust. But it led them to another part of the underground ruins. After minutes of crawling, they dropped into a circular room. A round table sat in the middle, surrounded by broken chairs. Sierra stumbled toward the wall and wiped off dirt. Behind it, a painting, not just any painting. It showed her, but different. Dressed in a glowing gown, crown on her head, standing with others who looked like her, but none smiled. Sierra stared at it, eyes wide. "I don't remember this," she said softly. Ethan stepped beside her. "What is it?" "My family," she whispered. "But I thought they died." She looked around and pointed at the walls. This place was not prison. Ethan looked confused. "Then what?" She turned to him slowly. "Throne room." Ethan's eyes widened. This wasn't just a ruin, it was her palace. a palace buried by time and war. And she had been its lost princess, hidden away, experimented on, and forgotten. She touched a console. It lit up. Images appeared, her as a child, laughing, her mother, her father, her people. Then flames, screams, ships leaving the sky. I was left behind, she whispered. Too young, too broken. Ethan clenched his fists. They abandoned you? She didn't answer. Instead, the ground shook again. The Guardian was back, but something had changed. As it entered the throne room, it stopped. Its red eyes flickered. It scanned Sira again. This time, its voice was slower. Royal access confirmed. New directive. Await command. Sira blinked. It listens now? Ethan whispered. Tell it to stop. She looked up at the giant machine and spoke in her old language. The Guardian lowered its head. Peace for now. But in her heart, Sira knew the system didn't care about her. Not really. It only followed programming. If she gave the wrong order, it would kill them both. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to be who they made you. She looked at him. Lost. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. He smiled gently. Then let's find out, together. But above them, the old machines buzzed louder. The planet's systems were waking. Something else had noticed her return. They were not alone. Something was still hunting on this planet. The Guardian stood silent like a statue. But the room didn't feel safe. Something had changed in the air. The lights flickered. The ground gave a soft tremble. Not from the machines, steps this time, but from deep underground. Sira stared at the broken throne in the center of the room. This place is not sleeping anymore, she said quietly. It remembers me, and it remembers what it lost. Ethan didn't like the sound of that. What do you mean? She looked up at the ceiling as dust dropped from cracks above. There were others, experiments, soldiers, creatures made from pain they were locked away beneath. And now, he asked, they are waking. Suddenly, a siren wailed. The Guardian snapped to life again. Containment breach detected. Lifeforms released, escape advised. Sira's eyes widened. They're free. Ethan moved fast. We need to go. Now. They ran through the side tunnel, guided by blinking lights. The walls around them were shaking. Screams echoed through. The structure, but not human screams. Low, guttural, unnatural. As they turned a corner, Ethan froze. One of them was there. Tall, skin half metal, half raw flesh. It had no eyes, just black pits. Its arms were long, dragging sharp claws. It sniffed the air and let out a sound like a broken machine choking on rage. It sensed them. Ethan grabbed Sira's hand and pulled her into a side hall. The creature roared and gave chase. The lights behind them died one by one. Ethan reached an old door and slammed it shut, just as the beast slammed into it from the other side. Dust fell from the ceiling. The door cracked, but held. For now, they caught their breath. Sira touched the wall and activated a small blue light. They were inside a forgotten lab. Tubes lined the walls. Some were broken. Some still had strange shapes floating inside. Your people built these? Ethan asked. Sira nodded. I think they wanted perfect soldiers, but they made monsters. She stepped toward a console. The screen blinked and her hand activated hidden files. Images flashed. Sira, inside a tube. Her as a child. Crying. Notes. Tests. A message log from her mother. My daughter is alive but damaged. I fear the council will discard her. I've hidden her in stasis. If she wakes, I hope she finds kindness. Sira closed her eyes. My own mother saved me and then left me behind. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. She gave you a chance. You're still alive. That means something. But there was no time to think. The door behind them shook again. A deep growl echoed from outside. Then, a second one. Another creature had joined. The Guardian's voice rang through the old speaker on the wall. Threat level rising. Underground. Sector no longer safe. Emergency elevator activated. Ethan saw a panel on the floor begin to slide open. There, they ran to it as the door finally broke open behind them. The two beasts crawled in. Screaming, snarling, full of rage, Ethan and Sierra dropped into the elevator just in time. The platform began to rise. As the creatures clawed at the sides, the elevator vanished up the shaft, darkness swallowing everything below. When it stopped, they stepped out into a cold, open space. They had reached the surface again, but a different side of the planet, and what they saw made their hearts stop. In the far distance, through the dusty air, a spaceship was landing. But it wasn't a rescue ship. Its flag was from the very empire that had abandoned Sierra, and now they were back. The truth revealed. She was never just a survivor. The spaceship's engines roared across the dead sky. Dust and ash flew through the air as the large silver ship touched down near the ruins. Its surface gleamed with the symbol Sierra had seen in her dreams, 3 stars around a crown. She stepped forward slowly, her eyes locked on the symbol. "My family's crest," she whispered. Ethan stayed close, watching her. "Your people are back?" Sierra didn't answer. Her face showed fear but also anger. The ship's ramp opened with a hiss. A group of soldiers stepped out. Their armor was shiny, clean, and marked with the same royal crest. They moved in formation, and behind them, a tall alien woman walked with grace and cold pride. She had silver hair like Sierra. Her skin was a brighter blue. Her eyes were harder, sharp like ice. Her crown sat high on her head. Sierra's breath caught. "That's my aunt." The soldiers scanned the area, then pointed toward Sierra and Ethan. The leader raised her voice. "Royal subject, Sierra. By order of the High House, you are to return for reassessment and restoration." Sierra blinked. "Reassessment?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "Your body is still usable. The bloodline must continue. Your failure to respond to the recall years ago was unfortunate." Ethan stepped in front of her. "She's not going anywhere." The soldiers raised their weapons. Sierra touched Ethan's arm and stepped forward. "Why now?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why come back?" The woman's face stayed calm. "The war is over. The council needs heirs. You carry royal blood." Sierra's hands curled into fists. "You left me to rot, to die. You used me in a lab like a broken toy." The woman didn't blink. "You were protected, hidden. Now you will serve." Sierra shook her head. "I'm not yours anymore." The woman raised her hand. "Take her." The soldiers stepped forward. Suddenly, a roar came from behind the ruins. The ground shook. The Guardian appeared, eyes glowing, weapons out. Its voice boomed. "Royal subject under protection. Threat detected, attack order granted." The soldiers froze. One shouted, "Stand down. This is official royal business." The Guardian did not care. Sierra stepped between them. Her voice was calm but firm. "Leave," she said. "This planet remembers me. It obeys me. I am not your tool. I am your queen." The alien woman stared at her, then smiled. But it wasn't kind. "You won't survive out here alone forever." Sierra held, her head high. "I'm not alone." She turned to Ethan, who nodded without fear. The soldiers backed away slowly. The woman gave a final warning glance. Then they left, climbing back into the ship, which rose into the sky and vanished into the clouds. Silence returned. Sierra fell to her knees. Tears ran down her face, but this time not from fear, from freedom. Ethan knelt beside her. "You did it. I remembered who I am," she said softly, "but I chose who I want to be." The Guardian stood tall behind them, silent, waiting for command. Sierra looked at Ethan and smiled. "Let's build something new. Right here." But, far above, another satellite blinked alive. Someone else had seen everything. The galaxy was watching. A new dawn and a home-built-together morning came slowly on the abandoned planet. The skies were no longer deep orange. Pale light broke through the thick clouds for the first time in years. It wasn't bright, but it was enough to warm the land, to melt the frost in the broken stones, and to chase away the shadows. Ethan stood on the edge of the ruins, staring into the horizon. Sierra walked beside him, quiet and calm. They had been rebuilding. The palace ruins, once full of ghosts, and machines, were changing. The Guardian, still loyal, had cleared much of the rubble. Together they had turned a forgotten command room into a home. Walls patched with stone and scrap. Solar panels from the crashed pod brought light, and broken machines had been turned into heat generators. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Sierra stood in the old garden. With her hand over the dry ground, she whispered in her language. Green vines began to move. The planet still remembered her. Not just her blood, but her spirit. She was not the broken girl left behind in a tank. She was the key to the planet's memory. And now she was helping it heal. Later that day, she and Ethan sat on the stairs of the old throne room, watching the light stretch across the land. I used to dream of a rescue, Sierra said softly. But now I think I was waiting for something else. For what? Ethan asked. For you? He looked down, unsure how to answer. She placed a hand over his. You didn't just save me. You gave me a choice. No one ever did that before. Before he could speak, a sudden beep came from the scanner near the gate. They both stood fast. Sierra walked to the old screen. A signal. Faint, but real. Not the Empire. Not a warning. A message. This is colony ship Aurora. Receiving unknown life. Signals. Investigating for survivors, please respond. Ethan stared at the message. Humans, he whispered. A real colony ship. Sierra looked at him. Do we answer? He hesitated. Do you want to leave? She looked around. At the soil now growing again. The broken palace that had become shelter. The quiet planet that no longer felt empty. Then she looked at him. No, she said. I want to stay. But maybe we invite them here. He smiled. Together they sent back a simple message. There is life here, and a future. Come in peace, or don't come at all. Far above, the stars watched quietly, and down on the once dead planet, life had begun again. The end.